the webinar. All right, and before we begin, I'm just going to do a quick introduction of our presenter today, Tara O'Hare. So Tara O'Hare currently serves as the Implementation and Commercial Outreach Lead for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's WaterSense program in Washington, D.C. Tara has worked on WaterSense for the past 13 years and is responsible for program operations, partner support, and outreach to commercial and institutional facilities. Tara led the development of WaterSense at Work best management practices for commercial and institutional facilities and has delivered trainings and webinars to a wide variety of stakeholders from all parts of the commercial building sector. Ms. O'Hare has a bachelor's degree in business and environmental management from the George Washington University and a master's degree in environmental science and policy from the Johns Hopkins University. So that is it for me. I will now pass things over to Tara to start today's presentation.
Thank you so much, Rosemary, and thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to come and learn more about saving water in restrooms. So I'm just going to get started today. We have, this is one of the series of webinars that we're doing this year. We did one on finding leaks in March, and then we are doing 2 more in June and July, so you can register when you get the presentation. The links will be active for you. So today we're going to go through a quick introduction of what WaterSense is, and then we'll get into restroom water use and savings opportunities. Then we'll also touch on laundry equipment and some of the water efficient practices that you can use in that area. Then we'll go through some WaterSense resources and get to your questions and answers. So just to give you some context, we'd like to remind people that water and energy are very much connected. Every gallon of water has an energy footprint because energy is needed to pump, move, heat, and treat water, and vice versa is also true. So because of this, saving water can save energy. At about 8% of commercial buildings, energy use is actually used to heat water, which is about the same amount of energy that's used for cooling and ventilation. So it's a significant area that you can find savings. And so because of this, large savings can be found from reducing hot water and steam usage especially, which will come into play as we talk about showers and faucets today. So because of this, in order to get the best results from your planning process for new projects, you really need to evaluate both water and energy efficiency together to make sure that you get the best cost savings. So the WaterSense program was launched in 2006, and it's a voluntary program that provides a simple way for consumers to identify water-efficient products, programs, practices, and homes. The WaterSense label is the one that you see on the right-hand side of your screen, and it is found on products that are independently certified for water efficiency and performance. Back in the 90s, when low-flow products first came out, they didn't work very well. So each one of our specifications includes a performance requirement to make sure that you'll get a product that saves water and works just as well as the standard counterparts. The WaterSense label can be found on a few different product categories. We're going to talk about several of them today, including flushing urinals, flushometer valve and tank tie toilets, shower heads, laboratory faucets, and then we also have some outdoor products as well that we're not going to talk about today, but just so you know what they are, we have irrigation controllers that are both weather-based and soil moisture sensor-based controllers, as well as spray sprinkler bodies, which are used to manage the pressure within a sprinkler head. We also have a labeled homes program as well. And the products can be found, there are more than almost 40,000 product models have earned the label to date, and they're in all different types of price points and features. So when you're looking for products, we make sure that you're looking for the WaterSense label and also the Energy Star label, because we've worked with them to include water factors in several of their specifications as well. So when you look for the WaterSense and Energy Star label, you know you're getting an efficient product. Just to give you some context, I wanted to put together a quick profile of some of the main types of facilities that are found in commercial businesses and institutional businesses to show you how much water is actually being used where. So as you can see here, there's a blue bar at the bottom of the graph, and that actually is the amount that's used for restroom and domestic water use. And that is about 30 to 40% of water use, kind of across the board. So it's a significant area where you can find savings. The next largest ones are usually with cooling and heating and outdoor water use as well. We'll get to those in other webinars. So today, because water is used so much in restrooms, and it can be up to 40% of water use, we wanted to talk about this very important topic. If you have older fixtures that were installed before 1994, they use 3 to 5 times more water than the newer efficient models. So they're really good places to find savings. As with some of the energy products, water savings usually depends on user behavior, just like the energy. So it's really important to educate users at the same time to make sure that they're using the products effectively. And then also to conduct regular maintenance to achieve the greatest savings. We're going to talk about a couple of different products today, and some of them are found in public restrooms, which are usually for larger volume usage. They include either flushometer valve toilets or tank-type toilets, as well as urinals, faucets, and shower heads. But there are also private use and guest room bathrooms that are found in different commercial facilities like hotels, multifamily buildings, and other types. Sometimes restaurants will have the private restrooms, and these are kind of a lower volume usage. They usually have tank-type toilets, which is the one that you see here in the picture, and they also often have shower heads and faucets. So to start with toilets, there are 2 types of toilets: the tank-type toilet that you find in your house, and also a flushometer valve toilet, which is the one with the black seat down the bottom that you find in a commercial facility. Each one of them before 1994 used 3.5 to 7 gallons per flush. And luckily there is a national standard for these products called EPACT, the Energy Policy Act. And that basically put requirements into place to say that toilets can't use more than 1.6 gallons per flush. So that's the current national standard. And the WaterSense level is 20% below that at 1.28 gallons per flush. And each one of them, again, has performance requirements to make sure that it meets the ability to remove waste and flush properly. Tank-type toilets, unfortunately, are often leaky because of the parts that are within them. One of the things to pay attention to is to replace leaky toilet flappers, because if they're leaking, they can waste 30 gallons per day or 900 gallons per month. And the flapper is just a small piece of rubber usually that's it closes the flush cycle, and they are easily replaced. They're about $4 to $9, and I'll talk about how to figure out if you have a leaky flapper in a few minutes. Just so you know, retrofit devices exist for these products, but you really want to avoid them because they can negatively affect performance. So this includes things like displacement dams or bags. Sometimes people use bricks or early closing flappers or valves with different flush volumes. They don't work very well because the toilets are designed so that the bowl matches the actual flush volume. And so you want to make sure that you're making sure that it works correctly. If you have these toilets that are, even if they're 1.6 gallons per flush, we encourage you to replace them at some point with 1.28 gallons per flush. They often are in all price ranges. Some are between $100 to $250 on average, so they're relatively inexpensive. Flushometer valve toilets, on the other hand, contain 2 main components: the toilet bowl and the flushometer valve itself. And so they basically, in WaterSense, they're tested together so that they make sure that the performance is correct. And so basically you have to make sure that the valve matches the bowl. That's because, you got to make sure that the bowl actually is designed to remove, waste at that volume. So you can also make sure that often they'll have sensors or automatic flush devices. So you really want to make sure that you calibrate those regularly to prevent double and phantom flushes or ghost flushes. Another point with this is that the valves sometimes get wear and tear, so it's important to inspect the diaphragm or piston valve on a regular basis to make sure that it's actually working correctly. If you are doing replacements in only women's restrooms, we encourage you, or only toilets, excuse me. If you're only replacing toilets, we encourage you to prioritize women's restrooms because they use the toilet 3 times more than men on average. So that's where you can find the greatest savings. On the other hand, urinals exist that we have. The ones that were installed before 1994 are 1.5 to 3 gallons per flush. The current national standard of the EPAC standard is 1 gallon per flush. WaterSense goes 50% below this level at 0.5 gallons per flush. And each one of them is also labeled in combination with the valve and the bowl together to make sure that they're actually going to perform as well as they're supposed to. So this is another area where there are often sensors, and we encourage you guys to calibrate these sensors regularly to prevent the phantom or double flushes. If you are replacing the flush valve, make sure that it's actually compatible with the fixture because they do sometimes look very similar. One thing you can do if you don't know what the actual valve is supposed to be, you can contact your maintenance department because often they'll have extra valves that are, available so that you know what the actual correct valve replacement is. And if you are replacing an older, inefficient urinal, we encourage you to do it with a WaterSense labeled model because it includes the flush volume as well as the performance requirements again. Private use faucets are the ones that are found in your home, patient rooms or guest rooms, and they are used for shaving, washing your face, brushing your teeth, and hand washing. So they usually started before 1994. They were 2.5 gallons per minute or more. And the current national standard is 2.2 gallons per minute, but WaterSense goes significantly below that at 1.5 gallons per minute. And each one has a performance requirement as well. So if you are going to retrofit with WaterSense labeled aerators or faucets, you want to look for those WaterSense labeled models because they are a maximum of 1.5 gallons per minute at 60 pounds per square inch or 60 psi, and a minimum of 0.8 gallons per minute at 20 psi to ensure performance. Public use faucets, on the other hand, are usually only used for hand washing. They're most common in commercial facilities, and so they can have, because they're only for hand washing, they tend to have a lower maximum flow rate. So before 1994, they were often 2.5 gallons per minute or more as well, and the national standard was previously 2.2 gallons per minute. Now there's a national standard that's 0.5 gallons per minute, and that's been adopted by many different municipalities as part of the plumbing code. And they often use automatic sensors as well. And even though this lower flow rate of 0.5 gallons per minute has been adopted into plumbing code, we still see people installing faucets up to 2.2 gallons per minute, even though it's not really needed. So you really want to pay attention and make sure that you're using a smaller or a lower flow one if you can. Unfortunately, this is an area that we often hear about occupant complaints. So if that's happening and you're getting complaints, we encourage you to check the water pressure and make sure that it's actually within the 20 to 80% range, or 20 to 60 gallons, 60 pounds per square inch, excuse me, and to make sure that it's actually reaching that correctly. And so from experience, it's common that facilities will just take the aerators out and not reverse the faucet back to 2.2 gallons per minute or more. But if you choose to remove the 0.5 gallon per minute aerator that's on the end, that based on this user dissatisfaction, we recommend installing a 1 gallon per minute aerator instead of nothing. So also, if aerator removal is a problem, if people are tampering with the aerators, you may want to consider installing vandal-proof fixtures as well, because those do exist. Periodically, we encourage you to check and adjust the automatic sensors. They need to be calibrated on a regular basis so that the water is cutting off at the end of the cycle the way that it's supposed to. You can actually retrofit these devices with faucet aerators, which are just twisted on at the end of the faucet where the water comes out, or you can use laminar flow devices flowing at 0.5 gallons per minute. So we encourage you, if you are replacing these fixtures, to use faucets that are flowing at 0.5 gallons per minute or less, or if you have metered faucets, which usually have a cycle, we encourage you to use ones that deliver no more than 2.25 gallons per cycle. So we've gotten questions about what an aerator is on previous webinars, so I wanted to just go over what those were. So on the left side of this slide, you can see what a standard aerator is, and that's usually used for residential. It has a larger, wider aerated stream that's soft to the touch, and the one in the middle is a spray aerator that's usually used in commercial restrooms, and those are usually done, it's a mini shower pattern almost, and those are really great for hand washing especially. And then if you're in a high flow application, or you're a healthcare facility and you want to make sure that you're reducing the amount of aeration that's happening, you can use what's called a laminar flow device, which is basically the one on the right-hand side, and it makes a crystal clear stream that's really helpful for these high flow applications or the healthcare facilities. These aerators cost from $5 to $10 each, so they're really easy to use to retrofit these faucets. So the next one is shower heads. Shower heads are found in different parts of commercial facilities, including dorms, locker rooms, fitness centers, and in multifamily residential units, as well as guest rooms in a hotel, for example. And so before 1994, they used 3.5 to 5 gallons per minute. The current national standard is now 2.5 gallons per minute, but WaterSense has gone lower than that. And so this one is actually 2.0 gallons per minute or less for the WaterSense labeled models. And so as an example for what a performance metric was for this, we actually had to come up with a way to determine what a good shower was. I'm using air quotes, you can't see them, but a good shower, we've been able to find metrics that include spray force and spray coverage to make sure that you're getting the shower that you expect with this product. So in general, replacing a shower head is more economical and practical than retrofitting. There aren't many good retrofit options for shower heads. If you are going to replace a 2.5 gallon per minute or higher shower head, we encourage you to do it with the WaterSense labeled model because it uses 2.0 gallons per minute or less and meets those requirements for spray force and spray coverage. Another thing for maintenance, you want to inspect shower heads often and remove any scaling buildup from hard water and any biofilm that exists. So this is just an overview of what I just talked about. These are all of the different WaterSense labeled product levels, and so you can see that they apply to almost all the products, everything except the public use faucets. So another aspect we talk about a lot is operation and maintenance portion. If you're, all of them require maintenance, and so we wanted to get into some of the things that were important to pay attention to as you're doing maintenance on these fixtures. So unfortunately, restroom products tend to be very notoriously leaky because they have valves and gaskets and different things that break down over time. So you really want to make sure that you're checking at the end use on a regular basis to find any leaks or inefficiencies. In the energy world, if there's a problem with the product usually just stops working. Unfortunately, that's not the case in the water world. Plumbing products often fail open and they leak like crazy. And so they, this is just kind of part of the deal with these products, unfortunately. Because the broken parts don't always stop the water from flowing, it can reduce the efficiency, so you may not notice, or it can cause leaks or property damage. And as you can imagine, any leaking or continuously running water has no added value to the business, so you really want to make sure that you are staying on top of this and verifying the water use at the end use. These leaks in continuously running water often are about 6% of water use in a facility, and you can find them in a lot of different ways. You can find them through spikes in water usage that you can find if you've been tracking your water usage and comparing your monthly bills and meter readings over time, or you can use a cheat and actually read the meters during off-peak hours to see if the meter is running when no one's in the building, then you know you have a leak. You can also use leak detection or failure abatement devices that attach themselves to building management systems, and so they can give you alerts through your phone or through your email, and that way you know you're alerted that there's a problem. Another way is also through walkthroughs that will identify leaks. Anytime you have puddles or drips, running fixtures or discharge to floor drains, you know that there could be a problem. And then also another important area is to get reports from employees, visitors, and tenants, because they can be your eyes and ears on the ground. And the whole name of this game is to prevent property damage, like you see in this picture, because it can be significant and is not helpful at all. So in order to verify water use at the end point, basically, there are a few different tips that you can use. So with tank-type toilets, the easiest one to do is what's called a dye test. So you can use a dye tablet like the ones that you see on the screen here, or you can just use food coloring from the grocery store. And basically you drop the tablets or the food coloring into the tank of the toilet and you wait about 10 minutes. If there's dye in the bowl itself, then you have a leaky toilet flapper and you need to change it. In order to check the function of flushometer valve toilets and flushing urinals, you have to do a timed flush test. And this is basically where you count the number of seconds that elapse during the flush cycle to see how much time it takes. You can either multiply that time in seconds by these two numbers that are here, 0.42 and 0.25, or you can use kind of a cheat, which is that a 1.6 gallon per flush cycle takes about 4 seconds, and if you're 1.28, it should take about 3 seconds. Anything more than that, it's probably malfunctioning and you probably need to change it or change out the valve. With faucets and shower heads, it's a timed flow test where you can use a flow bag like the one that's on the picture here that has markings for the different volumes, or you can just use a cup, a measuring cup or a pitcher that you know the volume of, and that's basically you just see how much time it takes to get to that certain volume. And that way you can check to see how much water is being actually used by the fixture. Another way to look is to sub-meter some of your areas within your facility. This is one of the things that you can do to not wait for the bill to see the problems. It can help alert you sooner than that so that you can actually fix them. Sub-metering specific end uses in the water world, you don't actually need a separate utility account. This can really just be for internal use only. You can use temporary flow meters or other monitoring devices like acoustic leak detection, and it can tell you if there's a leak. And you can also set up alerts to quickly identify the leak and any inefficiencies or malfunctions. So it can be really helpful. You can also track water use over time to spot the problems, and Portfolio Manager includes some water metrics to help you do that. Another way is also to do electronic monitoring, and this can be more precise, but it can be higher costs. So again, they don't require any separate utility account, but you can use them and move them around in many cases. The picture here is for an acoustic flow meter, and that basically uses sound waves to determine the volume of water going through the pipe underneath it. So that's one that can be moved all around the facility to check, spot check things. You can also use some wireless devices can provide 24/7 data. For example, one is a tank-type toilet monitor, and that's just a monitor that goes on the actual toilet itself to see if the water is flowing when it's not supposed to. And so that's an example where it can be more expensive, but it can get you very specific data on those fixtures. So it's kind of a balance that you have to find for yourself of how much you're willing to pay for how much data. So many of these include these alerts again, and that can trigger phone calls and emails so you know when there's a problem. So this is just a picture of what Energy Star Portfolio Manager looks like. There is a water tab that's next to the energy tab, and you can add a water meter or multiple water meters. You can even add sub-meters if you want to, and that's a good way to track your water use over time as well. In terms of general restroom maintenance, you want to, again, test the water pressure serving each floor to make sure that it's achieving expected fixture performance. And because if the pressure is too low or too high, the fixtures won't perform as well as they're supposed to. So the optimal pressure is between 20 and 80 pounds per square inch. Anything beyond that is not exactly going to be helpful. Once again, you need to annually inspect valves and replace worn parts like leaky flappers. And you want to adjust automatic sensors on fixtures to avoid those double flushes or faucets running longer than necessary. Again, you want to check for tampering to make sure that any dissatisfied users make sure that they haven't disabled the sensors, removed the aerators, or otherwise damaged the fixtures. And then finally, you want to regularly remove any scale buildup and biofilm on fixtures, especially faucets and shower heads. So one of the things that we need to talk about a little bit is just preventative maintenance in general. This is something that's come up because of COVID, because there's been such a long time that buildings have been unoccupied. And so when you're bringing a system back online, you need to make sure that you flush any stagnant water out of the plumbing system before you actually have people using the system. So you want to actually not only flush the system because of that, but also if something's not being used very often. So this can come into play with faucets and shower heads and other safety fixtures like eye wash stations and emergency showers, especially in like hospitals where there's a restroom in every patient room. They're not always using that, so you need to make sure that you're flushing them on a regular basis. And because this is necessary for safety, we encourage you to save water elsewhere. This is one area where you have to unfortunately use water, but it's for a good reason. And then also comprehensive maintenance of fixtures and equipment will improve the efficiency and maintain water quality. So this is especially for removing scale buildup and biofilm on shower heads to prevent the buildup of Legionella or other pathogens in the system. There's a really great toolkit that was done by the CDC, so if you want some more information, I've included the link here as well. Another one, as I mentioned before, is that stopping running toilets is very important. This is actually a picture of a running toilet road race that one of our partners did for our annual Fix a Leak Week campaign. And that's just a week where we encourage people to fix leaks within their facilities. So again, you want to make sure that you're periodically checking the tank type toilet fill valves and the water levels in the tanks to make sure that it's working properly. You want to adjust the float lower if the water level is set above the overflow tube. And a constantly running fill valve can waste between 0.5 and 3 gallons per minute, which can be up to 4,000 gallons of water per day. So that's again where this dye tablet test or the food coloring test comes in, because these small leaks can often be hard to detect, but they actually use a lot of water. So it's one to pay attention to on a regular basis. And you want to replace fill valves or install new flappers because they will pay for themselves in avoided water and wastewater costs in 1 to 2 months. So it can be significant. Again, with automatic sensors, they don't save water on their own, especially if they're not maintained properly. Malfunctioning sensors can flush toilets and urinals unnecessarily, or they can make faucets run longer than needed or cut off too early, actually forcing users to use extra cycles if you have a metered cycle faucet. They can be disabled by dissatisfied users or cleaning staff, so you need to make sure that you're on top of this and calibrate the sensors regularly using the manufacturer's instructions. And if you can't find it, you can always contact the manufacturer and they'll give you the information. One of the most important areas as well is to educate users. They're your eyes and ears on the ground, especially your custodial and maintenance staff, so they can help you identify and fix leaking or malfunctioning fixtures and equipment. For example, with cleaning staff, if you're cleaning a tank-type toilet and you notice a little ripple of water on the edge of the water, little ripple, basically that means you have a leaky flapper. So if they're going through and you just tell them what to look for, that can be very helpful. They can point that out to you faster. So one way is to train them, and another way is to also post signage in the restrooms with a call to action and some contact information for repairs. We put an example here on the slide just so you can see that this is just some basic information, because you want people to know how to actually report the problems to you. That's pretty important when it comes to maintenance over time. If you have new technologies, especially dual flush fixtures, we encourage you to post instructions, because sometimes people don't understand which one is the half flush and which one is the full flush. So it's important, you may not think of it, but it's important to make sure people are using it correctly. We also have some artwork that's available for use. We have some that we created on the WaterSense side, and then there's a few on the Energy Star side as well that you can use just to kind of have that signage up and make people aware of the problem so they can help you. Again, with retrofits and replacements, shower heads and faucets are relatively inexpensive, and they can actually improve performance with the spray force and spray coverage of shower heads in particular. Toilets and urinals have a longer payback period, but they have a greater water savings. One thing that's very important to look for is to check all of your utilities, both the energy and natural gas and water utilities, for rebates, because there are often rebates for these products. Sometimes they'll even do a custom rebate if you're doing a large project where you're retrofitting the whole building. Sometimes they're able to do a customized rebate as well for you. So encourage you to check that out so that you can shorten the payback period and improve the return on investment. Some other considerations if you are doing a project is that you want to check for compatibility of the plumbing system in an older building with very low flow fixtures. Before you actually do the project, you want to consult a plumbing engineer to learn about the constraints of your plumbing system, and this is usually dictated by the drain lines and how they are laid out. So you want to inspect the drain lines for damage or wear before installing new toilets and urinals, for example. And you want to start with a pilot of a few fixtures in different parts of the building before you do a full-scale retrofit, so that you can make sure that it works. And you really want to make sure that you only match product components that have been tested together to ensure performance. So like WaterSense products are certified in combination, so the toilet bowl and the flush valve are tested together to make sure that they work properly. Other replacement components may not meet the efficiency or performance requirements. So if you want to know more about the transport of solid waste in a drain line, there's a study that was completed by the I forget the name of the company, PERC is the name of the study, but we put a link here so that you can check it out and learn more. When you're calculating potential savings, occupancy data is really vital to calculating the potential savings in restrooms, because the water consumption is based on usage, not just the number of fixtures. Also, the male to female ratio is key when calculating toilet savings. If you're doing a phased project with toilets only, prioritize women's restrooms because they use the toilet 3 times more than men do. In men's restrooms, a combination of toilet and urinal replacements would be the most effective for greater savings than if you install them separately. So if you don't know, you can use some assumptions as well when you're calculating some of these potential savings. There are some standard numbers of estimated restroom usage per person that are out there. So I included them here so you could see, for example, employees use the restroom on average 3 times in an 8-hour period, whereas hotel guests and hospital occupants use it 4 times per day, for example. And then males are estimated to use urinals 66% of the time and toilets 33% of the time. So if you don't have data on building occupancy, another way to do it is to use one of those temporary flow meters or other monitoring technology to measure the water use in that area. And if you want more information, you can check out this report from the Pacific Institute, because there's a lot of information in there. If you're doing savings calculations, you need to make sure that you include all of the direct and indirect costs in your calculations, because the true cost of water is not just the water rate, but the water rate and the sewer rate, plus the volume of water used, or times the volume of water used, plus any fees or associated costs. And another associated cost, for example, is energy savings from hot water use. This is especially important with faucets and shower heads because they use hot water. There can actually be a lot of energy savings in these projects as well. You want to make sure that you're not leaving that savings on the table. You can also look at things like associated materials, detergent, cleaning supplies. Another one to think about is if there are fewer maintenance calls that may be happening with newer fixtures, or less depreciation and wear as well. Again, you want to check for rebates to make sure that you're finding anything that's available to you. There is a national database for energy rebates called Desire, but there is no national one for water rebates. So we encourage you to just contact your utility or check out their website and see what's available. And project costs and benefits will be more realistic if you include all of these things, and it will often provide you a better return on investment or a shorter payback period. So it's important to include all of this. For example, if a typical large office building with 2,500 occupants replaces its older, inefficient toilets and urinals with WaterSense labeled models and installs 0.5 gallon per minute faucet aerators on standard faucets, it could save nearly 3.9 million gallons of water and more than $36,000 in water costs per year. So you can see how it kind of pays back pretty quickly when you have larger projects as well. So in addition to restrooms, we also include laundries in this in the sanitary systems, as we call them. And so this is a slightly different area, but I wanted to make sure we covered it. So multifamily buildings and dormitories often use commercial or coin card operated washers or no-pay commercial washers, whereas professional laundries, hospitals, and hotels use larger equipment like multi-load washers, washer extractors, or tunnel washers. So with coin or card operated washers or no-pay washers, you can actually replace them with Energy Star labeled products, and they will actually be 45% more efficient than standard models. So they save quite a bit of water as well as energy. So that's a really easy one to look for the Energy Star label, and you know you're getting a water and energy efficient product. It also usually saves on water, energy, and detergent. With larger operations, they're really often standardized to the facility, but Energy Star doesn't label these, so you just need to kind of see what's out there. Multi-load washers do about 80 pounds per load or more, and they use less than 8 gallons per cycle per square foot. Washer extractors are even bigger. They do 30 to 800 pounds per load. And then they use only about 2 to 4 gallons of water per pound of fabric. So you can see that kind of as you go up in size, they often use less water because they're more complicated pieces of equipment. And then the largest one is called a tunnel washer. We included just kind of a schematic there so you can see that it includes multiple wash cycles as well as a rinse cycle and an extraction, where that one can actually clean 2,000 pounds per hour. And they use less than 2 gallons of water per pound of fabric. So they're actually the most efficient, but they're the largest and most specialized. So you really need to just figure out what capacity you need for your facility and kind of look for, some of these things as you are looking for products to replace them. In terms of retrofits or other savings, you want to make sure that you program the washers to use the least amount of wash and rinse cycles required for the dirtiness of the load. So, for example, multi-load washers should use 8 gallons per cycle per square foot or less. And another option is to use a water reuse or recycling system, and this is a retrofit basically, There are simple systems that reuse water from the final rinse cycle for the first wash of the next cycle, and they can save 10 to 35% of water. There are more complex versions available where they actually treat the reclaimed water from the wash and rinse cycles. It can be used in all cycles of the next load and save 85% of the water used. Another option is an ozone injection system, and that allows machines to run at a reduced temperature, like cold water, which in turn saves quite a bit of energy. The wash cycle often requires less detergent and chemicals, so less rinse water is required. And this can save 10 to 25% of water. And so this is very similar to the concept of OxyClean, where it's using ozone to actually reduce the, take some of the dirt out of the fabric. So to wrap things up, we have some resources that are available to help you guys manage all of this. And so the main site that we use for WaterSense is here with our commercial tools and trainings. We have a whole bunch of resources available, including water information by facility type, best management practices, tips, assessment tools, worksheets, checklists, and case studies. So I encourage you to check it out because there's a lot there. A few tools for getting started. We have a couple of checklists. One is a simple assessment checklist that you can use if you're just trying to assess water use in your facility. Our newest resource is an operation and maintenance checklist that you can just print it out and look for low and no cost changes in your facility to save water and energy as well. We also have some sample worksheets to help you organize the information if you're doing a water assessment, and as well as a facility leaks checklist that's available to kind of guide you as well. This is just an example of what the operation and maintenance checklist looks like. It has the different product types as well as some of the things to do to improve the water efficiency of those products. And then it sends you back to a section of our best management practices to learn more if you need more information. Our commercial leaks checklist is a little bit less involved. It's just a one-pager, and so it's just kind of guiding you to some of the areas where water can be, saved in your facility without much investment. So this is our best practices guidebook, and this covers every water-using product and technology in a commercial and institutional facility and provides information on the operation and maintenance phase as well as any retrofit and replacement phases of those products. So it's a really good resource that you can use if you're interested in like a specific product type. All the information that we talked about today is in there as well. We also have some specific ones for the multifamily audience, so those are available as well at the links that I have down at the bottom. We also put together some COVID-related resources. If you are going to flush your building before reopening, this is back to the CDC guidance that's available. It's very good, so I encourage you to check it out, especially if you've had a period where there's low occupancy in the building. And so this will help you kind of make sure that you're maintaining water quality within your facility as well. So this is, again, a series of webinars that we're doing this year. The next couple of ones are on, the next one's on quick wins for operation and maintenance projects, and the one after is on outdoor water use. We're calling it Beat the Peak for Water Wisely for commercial outdoor spaces. So you will get the links when you have the slides, and you can actually register that way, or you can look for the training email to come out from Energy Star each month. There are also recordings of past webinars that are available in the Energy Star Training Center. And so if you're interested, there's quite a few more that are available as well. So like if you missed the one on leaks that we did in March, you can go there and find those as well. So what can you do right now? I talked about a whole bunch of things, but some of the things that you can do right now are to start collecting your water bills and tracking your water use in Portfolio Manager. You can identify existing meter locations and areas or systems for new submeters. You can post the signage in the restrooms and laundry rooms to tell users how to save water and how to report leaks and other problems. You can incorporate restrooms into a facility walkthrough to check the plumbing fixtures for leaks and malfunctions. And then you can create a list of potential projects and contact utilities to see if rebates and incentives are available. And for laundry systems, you want to encourage your staff to waive the laundry so that the washers are filled to capacity. That's just one basic example. So now we're going to get to some of the questions and answers that hopefully you guys have been entering into the chat box, and I will answer as many of them as I can.